Welcome into another episode of Beers with Mears, presented by Picks Parlays. I am Hannah Mears, and today on tap, I've got a very exciting Thirsty Thursday guest for all of you. Jersey Jerry of Barstool Sports joins the show, and he recently just started something called Barstool Wrestling, which we talk a ton about. But today on Beers with Mears, we sort of have a non-alcoholic episode as well, because Jersey Jerry is celebrating about 7 years plus of sobriety. So very exciting to be able to have him on and honor him in this way and not do an alcoholic episode. So there won't be a beer review, but there is plenty of amazing content throughout this Thirsty Thursday interview that I'm so excited for you all to see and get to see the personality that is Jersey Jerry. He may sound like he is all about Jersey teams, but he loves the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we have got some Steelers content throughout this as well. Moving into win or lose, we booze. I'm going to brag a little bit, right? I admitted to my faults last week, so I'm going to brag a little bit this week. There has been money madness on my Mearsy minutes. We have been 5 for 5 this past week. Actually, 6 for 6 if I count the NBA bet that I also added before this North Texas one in NCAA. But we had North Texas, that was a win. Final Four, UConn, yep, win. Women's basketball, LSU plus 3.5, yeah, cash in. Angel Reese, win. We've got UConn minus 7.5. That was in the final. That was a win. And then their team total over 69.5 was a win as well. So win or lose, we booze, but we are winners this week. It's been a hot streak. You can always get my Mearsy minutes on a daily basis on Picks and Parlays. Make sure you download our Picks and Parlays app as well. That is available now. My Mearsy minutes are on there as well. So super exciting to have the app up and running for all of you to download. Also, for our segment of I will drink to that, I want to talk about Barstool Wrestling, just give everybody a little bit of an introduction as to what you're going to expect to see when Jersey Jerry comes on the scene. And we're talking all things Barstool Wrestling. He wanted to start this platform to really give exposure to NCAA wrestling and all of these athletes who are super popular, dedicated, and incredible at what they do in their sport of wrestling. Now, wrestling has a very niche audience, but I suggest listening to what Jersey Jerry has to say. There's a ton of really awesome names that he drops throughout this that you might want to follow along with. And I encourage you, find one person that you'd want to follow throughout the year. If you're not a wrestling fan already, find one person. This is how you get involved with the sport and really start to learn and follow along. One person, one personality that you really like. Follow along with their career in depth throughout college, and then maybe you'll become a wrestling fan yourself. But nonetheless, I think wrestling's in very good hands with Jersey Jerry stepping into the scene. He's going to bring a form of content that I think the sport is craving right now. So I'll drink to that one for sure. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Beers with Mears would love to welcome Jersey Jerry. Jersey Jerry, welcome to Beers with Mears. This is our non-alcoholic episode of Beers with Mears because Jersey Jerry has done something incredible. He has been sober now for how many years?
Over 7 now.
Over 7 years sober. Congratulations to you, because that is no easy task at all. So we are so proud of you, and I am honored to have you on my show and just welcome you in here in a space where you can feel safe as well. We've got the coffee mug. Look, my best friend even hooked me up for a coffee mug for this episode.
That's great.
It's so perfect, right? Beers with Mears.
It.
So how are you? I love your sign in the background.
Yes.
Tell the Beers with Mears fan, what's up with you today? What's going on in your life?
And not much, just work, work's been busy, traveling, college basketball, baseball season now. So I'm transferring to that for a little bit. And then before you know it, Steelers are back. So I'm excited for that. I'm doing Steelers stuff. I'm doing college wrestling stuff. I'll be at the US Open, which will be awesome. I'll be at Final X at the Prudential Center later on in a couple months. So I'm just excited, just trying to dive fully into the sports world and just keep going.
You talked about wrestling. This is exactly where I want to focus a lot of our talk today. So my last show was with Nino Bonacorsi, national champion from Pitt. I'm a huge wrestling gal. I've been forced into wrestling my entire life and just eventually have learned to love it. Been trying to grow the sport for so many years, just from a media side too, having more female presence inside of wrestling media. There isn't a ton of it all the time. So been trying to put more of a stamp on that, but also just showcase, even at the young level, getting guys comfortable with being on camera and getting interviewed, because it's a sport that is gaining a ton of traction and it's important. So you obviously have caught on to how successful this sport can be with starting Barstool Wrestling. Take me through the process of starting Barstool Wrestling, the process behind it, and what your vision is for this.
Yeah, so for me, like I've only been into wrestling, I'd say, for like 3.5 years, and it goes back to Nick Suriano at Rutgers, the first athlete there ever to win a national championship. So I appreciated the efforts from him. And, I was just at work one day and my buddy's like, oh, watch this. This is national championship. Nick Suriano, he's a Jersey boy. You'll love him. And I watch his match and I'm like, damn, this guy's pretty fucking good. I want to get to know this guy. So that's where my wrestling kind of background started a couple years back. And then, I got the job at Barstool about a year and a half ago. And, they hired me for Steelers stuff and just a funny guy for content, videos, skits, stuff like that. And then, about a year and a half in, a couple months ago, I said to myself, I watch wrestling all the time. I watch these guys. I watch the Big Ten tournament. I'm friendly with these guys. We talk from time to time. I got a really close friendship with RBY from Penn State. And I said to myself, the wrestling community, they could really use a boost. They can really use somebody like me that has a platform to really grow the sport. So I talked to Dave Portnoy, the owner of Barstool Sports, which is not anymore. He actually just sold it. But anyway, and he doesn't really care too much for wrestling, so he's
What's
like, oh,
his
wrestling's
deal?
a nobody. Yeah, he's like, wrestling's a nobody sport. You're never going to grow it. So for me, it's like, nah, fuck you, Dave. I'll grow the shit out of this. So for me, I just use it now as motivation. Like, I'm going to show you how big this sport can get. You'll see. Give me a couple years and you'll see, like, wow. Now, my vision for this is, yes, I want to get all the credentials and go to the events and interview. But my vision is this, like, kind of what Barstool did with the Barstool Invitational college basketball. We did the Barstool Bowl game for college football. We can have a Barstool Wrestling like invitational where, guys, athletes in college wrestling, they want to come compete and put on a show. And it's just another event that can get added throughout the year that I think wrestlers would love to wrestle at because
Absolutely.
they see Barstool Sports now. It helps me a lot because Barstool is such a big company, you know what I mean? So these wrestlers, they see like, okay, I don't know who Jersey Jerry is, but I know what Barstool Sports is. He works there. This will be a great opportunity for us to go to compete at this event and get our names out there, So now, you have NIL deals in college now. So it's like these dudes can make money on this stuff. So for me, I'm just trying to grow the sport. That's one thought I have is the invitational. Another thought I had a couple weeks ago was maybe following a team around for like a year and do like a documentary on it.
Like
Kind of with
a hard knocks for wrestling
yes,
would be sick.
yes. People would love that,
Yeah.
and so I think that's two good routes to take. But for me, these guys are really underappreciated. They're some of the best athletes, in the world. And most of them go on to have successful MMA careers. You know what I mean? So it could start wrestling. And then once they see like, oh, wow, these guys are in the MMA now, it's like, yeah, look where he started. Like he's just a college wrestler, So
Exactly.
I love the sport. I really do. I think it's a great sport. I think there should be so many more eyes on the sport than there is. And I think people will really appreciate, Barstool getting into the space and covering it because we're unique, we're funny, and we do really big numbers. So for wrestlers and wrestling programs, it's a win-win.
I completely agree with you. And for somebody who's been a wrestling fan for so long and now in the media and trying to grow the sport of wrestling in any small way that I can, this is huge. And I remember when you came to the pit wrestling match and all the pit wrestling staff and wrestlers were also excited to have you there because it's so great for the sport. It is so great to have any amount of eyes on it, even if people just came to see you that day. It's
Yeah.
still bringing people into that environment, which is important. And I think something like a wrestling hard knocks, following a team that's maybe having a down year or trying to rebuild or come to the top would be so cool. And if you
Oh
had a
yeah.
Barstool wrestling card, people would be dying to be on that. And we saw how successful those wrestling cards could be over COVID,
Yes,
right?
of course. Yeah. Like, dude, what kind of took me back in the beginning, because when I first dove into the space, there was some like backlash a little bit because Barstool, some people said Barstool doesn't need to be in this space. They're only for clickbait, funny clips and stuff like that. But as I've, continued my way into the space, I realized that, like, hey, you're going to have some bad press. You're going to have some good press. My goal, I don't care what you think about me, what you think about Barstool. We'll grow the sport. We'll grow the sport for you. Because, the NCAA in the beginning, they were kind of hesitant with me, especially when I reached out to them and I wanted to get credentialed. And they're like, hey, unfortunately, you've never covered the sport. Nobody really knows who you are. And my response to them was, hey, they might not know who I am, but I have this platform that could grow the sport, that can do the numbers on Twitter, do the numbers on Instagram. It's a win-win for you guys. And from an outside point looking in, it seems like you guys are kind of gatekeeping the sport, and there's no reason for that.
I will tell you that I am so happy they gave you a credential. I've worked with like USA Wrestling before and covered some stuff for them, freelance, did some writing and interviews. The NCAA national tournament, okay, I was supposed to cover back in 2020, go cover Penn State wrestling there because I was working at Penn State at the time. Obviously, COVID cancels that. I have been covering wrestling now since I graduated at a youth level, a high school level, a female level, a men's level, every level you can think of, from these guys wrestling at RTCs to college to high school to junior high. And I have never still been granted access to cover the national tournament for wrestling because they said, well, you didn't cover Division I this year. Well, no, because you guys don't let people do that. So
Exactly.
I agree with you. I think there is a much needed knockdown on the door to say, let other people in this space to help the sport grow, because there is a magnetic feel to a lot of these athletes. They have their own celebrity because wrestling has its own audience that is so loyal.
Exactly.
So loyal to these athletes. And for example, if Dave Portnoy needs an example, look at Tamira Mensah-Stock from her pre-Olympic gold to where she is now. Her following grew like 20,000 followers overnight because people were such a fan of her. So if you don't think there's room to grow and people want to be involved at the sport, they just need like one person to follow and gain traction. And I think it's to the moon from there.
Yeah, like you even look at the kid who beat Spencer Lee, this year.
Ramos,
he quadrupled his following overnight just from that match. Yet there's some people that knew about him, diehard Purdue fans, and stuff like that. But now he just pins one of the best wrestlers of all time. And look at him. He's exploding. He's doing all these interviews now. People want to talk to him, so it's like, hey, one post, one tweet can blow up your brand. It really can.
I'm here for like a Barstool Wrestling like college game day show as well. I think that would be so cool to do, like tailgate space. It's something that I've thought of for years where I'm like, I wish I had the means to do this. And I've talked to like other networks that I've been in contact with too. And I was like, why don't you have mat side reporters? Why aren't we making this a spectacle for people to tune into? Talk to these guys after every single match. There are things that happen throughout the season in dual meets where number one guys are losing. You saw what happened to Aaron Brooks this year and why he got ranked number 3 at the tournament. And when there's not that coverage to talk to these guys after, you're not making it an event that's worthwhile to the non-wrestling fan to tune into. So I appreciate you doing this at Barstool and thinking outside of the box, because for somebody who's so passionate about a sport, I know you're the guy that we trust this with.
Yeah, like for me, I was like taken back. I'm like in the beginning and still now I'm like, you have guys like Taylor from Penn State reaching out. The guy, DeJulius.
Yeah, Johnny DeJulius.
Yeah, he reached out to me like, hey, if you start a podcast, I want to be a guest. You have guys Spencer Lee, Pat Glory, RBY, Gable Stevenson, these guys reaching out, even Tristan Wirfs from the NFL. He hit me up like, yo, JJ, let me get a Barstool Wrestling hoodie. I want to promote it. I'll come on your podcast, whatever. So it's like you have all these athletes that are really well known that aren't even thinking about, hey, I'm not even going to touch Barstool. I want to go to Barstool because I want to get my name out there. So all these guys are really receptive and they're really eager to blow their name up, to blow their brand up, to blow their school up. So it's a win-win. It's like, for me, I'm talking to the best of the best athletes out there, and when it comes to college wrestling, and there's no pushback whatsoever. They're the ones contacting me saying, I want to blow this up with you. So it's really awesome.
People are making movies right now about female wrestlers and male wrestlers alike. So there is definitely engagement here. And you already mentioned some huge names. So I hope some female wrestling athletes will reach out to you as well because of how
One of them did.
dominant they are.
Oh man, one
Helen
of them did.
Tamira Mensastock.
What was the first one?
Tamira Mensastock, Helen Maroulis.
Not those two. Maybe those two. I'm not sure. Anyway, but she was like, I think she won Olympic gold. I think.
Okay, then Tamira or Helen.
Maybe
Sarah
Tamira.
Hildebrandt is a bronze medalist. She's also awesome. I could see her wanting to get involved. Peyton Prussian right now is dominating the NCAA women's scene, and she's going into WWE. So she's awesome too to talk to.
That's awesome.
There's a ton of females I can tell you about as well. So I won't keep going on, but if you ever need anything, any insight, I'm your girl. I'm all about it. But to grow the female side of it as well within the men's and just make these people the celebrities that they deserve to be, because as you learned traveling to Rutgers wrestling practice for one of your little documentaries, wrestling is no joke. And their practices in those 90-degree rooms, like these are the situations they're putting themselves through. I'm watching my boyfriend prepare right now and train himself, and the way he snapped his body back into shape and like cuts his diet immediately, starts eating, cutting down like months in advance for something is insane. I'm not a fan of it because I'm hungry in our house, but it's fine. I'll just eat a pork chop for dinner with you. But tell me what it's like to actually have gone and seen what these guys and girls are putting themselves through.
Yeah, so I kind of know a little bit. Like, when I traveled to Penn State for the duel between Iowa Penn State earlier this year, then I did the Rutgers thing, and people on TV they see, okay, Spencer Lee's going out and he's pinning guys in 30 seconds, this year. And these guys are top ranked guys, and he's putting them on their back and pinning them in 30 seconds, in a minute. And you see that and you're like, oh, wow, this guy is awesome. Yes, he is awesome. But you don't see the work that these guys put in, in not only the off season, but the days leading up to the duel or the days leading up to the match. You don't see that. And I seen it at Rutgers. I'm friendly with Joe Haltman. He was a transfer from North Carolina, and we got, friendly on Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that. He's kind of the one who invited me, and Coach Goody was really awesome. And I first stepped in the room. Now, I don't wrestle. I've never been a wrestler. I wrestled once my whole life, and I hated it at one practice, and I couldn't do it. But I got there, and I immediately stepped into the room, and I'm like, wow, it's friggin' hot in here. I was like dripping it like 10 seconds in. I'm like, is this normal? And the guy's like, yeah, man, this is every day. This is normal. This is what we go through. And this is, a week before Nationals. And, Goody just had his guys just foot on the gas, man, just going 100%. There's no days off. You know what I mean? We're going to push you to be the best. And he's such a really, really good coach. And it's just like, to see what these guys go through, afterwards we wanted to go get something to eat. Now I'm hungry. I've been there for 4 hours. I want to go get something to eat. We go out to eat, and, these guys are eating carrots, you know what I mean? And I got a panini in front of me, with a Coca-Cola. And it's like, man, these guys can't even eat. They're not eating because they got to make weight. You know what I mean? So it's the little things that you don't really see that to me are like, wow, man, these guys go through hell for this stuff. They are so dedicated. Yeah,
do you know like those doctor's appointments you have where like you can't eat for like 8 to 12 hours and you're like, you feel like you're suffering?
Yes.
And imagine what these guys do on a every other day basis, sometimes throughout the season, like suffering through that hunger pain and then expected to perform at like full strength hours later after being dehydrated and not eating properly. And then they're going out there and it's a dogfight between these people. So just to give people a glimpse into that is insane. But I think that's the cool part about if you had sort of a docuseries, let's say, that's the stuff that people wouldn't necessarily realize, but then they'd get to see finally is like that inside scoop to what really makes a wrestler who they are. So
Yeah.
I'm all for it. It is sweet. But a funny story about what wrestlers eat. You mentioned Nick Sirianno, right? So
Yeah.
Nick Sirianno used to go to Penn State.
Yeah.
My freshman year, he was a freshman. I was eating in the like cafeteria, like commons area. And I was with like my friends, Vincenzo Joseph, and we were eating. And I looked over and I was like, oh, Chen's like Nick Sirianno's sitting all by himself. Like, that's so sad. Like, let's go join him. And he's like, I don't think you want to join him right now. Like, he's in his zone. And I was like, what do you mean he's eating? And so like I walked over and sat by him, introduced myself because I was like, I don't want this kid to feel like lonely. Like, there's a bunch of us sitting here. I'll invite him over. And I think they knew like what was gonna happen. I get there. He has a plate of meat. That is all he's eating. Is a plate of meat, like stacked up. And I was like, oh, I'm in for a treat. So I was like, hi, Nick. Like, what's going on? What are you eating? And he's like, I eat meat. Like, need the protein. And like it was the most intense conversation I've ever had in my life. And we're talking about meat. And he just kept going back for more. And this guy is cut up. So it makes sense that the diet he has is meat. But I know you mentioned him. And I instantly go back to that story and just start laughing. I was like, man, that kid was sitting in the cafeteria by himself as a freshman, just crushing a plate of meat. It was
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah. Now, like, there's a lot of, people like to say, oh, wrestlers are weirdos and stuff like that.
I mean, they're their own group.
Yes, they're definitely their own group. Like, after the Rutgers video, I went back to the wrestling house for Rutgers, and they had all their wrestlers there who live there on campus and stuff like that. And I go there and we're just hanging out, playing video games. They're talking about MMA. And I'm just saying to myself, these dudes are regular dudes. They're like me, they like to watch sports, they like football, they like MMA, so for me, it's like, man, these guys aren't weirdos. These guys are pretty friggin' cool.
Yeah, they're my people. Like when I tell people, everyone in school would be like, oh, you're good friends with the wrestlers. I was like, these have been my people since day one, honestly, because they're also the most loyal friends I have. I started Beers with Mears. Instantly, the first followers I had were all of my like wrestling friends and my boyfriend's wrestling friends. And I was like, man, that is so cool of them.
Yeah.
Like they didn't have to do that, but they support it through and through. And they're just like the most loyal friends that I have. And so if I can do anything to up their platform, and during COVID, original podcast I had was called Hear Them Out with Hannah Mears. And I had on every other Wednesday was Wrestler Wednesday. I had on Anthony Cassar as the first guest, and it was insane, like blew up. People were loving it because they didn't get that insight to who he was. And he's an awesome human, but it was also hilarious because we were talking about moms hitting on him and like his whole experience with that and how bizarre it was. Had on Gas Tank Gary from Ohio State, who's now training out in Oklahoma, which you would love him. He's a great human. Hilarious. But there are so many personalities. I think that's the one thing that if I could tell Dave Portnoy, you're missing out an opportunity to highlight personalities that people, everyday, average, normal people can relate to. They're not these millionaires, billionaires in the MLB and NFL and NBA. These are the average, everyday people that you relate to that just happen to be really freaking good at what they do.
Exactly. That's the thing. You know what I mean? I relate to these guys a lot, man, and for guys like even like Spencer Lee, he is the nicest person going, man. He is so nice. It's like, he messaged me on Instagram the other day. We exchanged numbers and, just texting me and saying, here's my schedule this week. I'm free these days. I want to do a podcast with you in Barstool. I love you guys. And, I'll do anything. I'll do whatever it takes to help you, to help Barstool, to put this on the map. Now, this is a guy who's one of the best wrestlers of all time. And he's
who, by the way, just went through one of the biggest adversities probably in his career.
Yes. He probably that was the toughest loss of his whole entire career, not only for him, but for his family, for his coaches, to go for your fourth and to lose like that. It's got to be so intense, the feeling that he had afterwards. Now, for him to bounce back a couple days, weeks later and just be like, all right, I'm back. You know what I mean? Let's do this. It's like, wow, man, that's awesome. For me, I don't know how long it would take me, but definitely not that quick. These guys are wired different.
Ask Spencer Lee about his prom experience back in high school. I went to a prom and Spencer was there. And we were all on the dance floor, and it was actually in Heinz Field at the time, so now Acrisure Stadium. And Spencer was like shadow wrestling on the dance floor with his date. And I was like, if this isn't Spencer Lee, I don't know what is. I don't know if he just doesn't know how to dance or if he's just so dedicated, but
That's great.
it was hilarious. Yeah, wrestlers are their own breed, man, but they are a great piece to promote at Barstool. So I'm all for this. I'm on board with you, whatever you need as
Love
well.
it.
My small little part in this, but I'm here for whatever you need.
I love it.
But I also think, now listen, I work for a sports betting company. I'm a host and analyst here on Picks and Parlays. I think you should be able to bet on wrestling. I think in a more in-depth way, this college wrestling bracket this year at Nationals would have hurt so many souls, I think, in their pockets because of like, if look at RBY and Spencer Lee, that's already two that I'm sure people would have had shoot in for sure.
Exactly.
But I think there has to be a way to make that a possibility, because I would love to be able to do a daily Mearsy minute on what's going on in college wrestling that week and do bets like that. So how do you think Barstool can potentially help bring a lot of betting into the sport of wrestling?
Well, I think the goal is this, for me at least. I want to do my best to show Barstool, like, hey, we're getting views on YouTube. We're getting views on Twitter, on Instagram. We're gaining a following. You know what I mean? Grow the sport. Put these little documentaries out there, visit the programs, visit the coaches, and, in a year or two, start putting out wrestling lines and see how it is. And start off by like, hey, Iowa, Penn State duel. It's going to be Penn State minus 6 points, 8 points, whatever it is, and see how it works, and have some promotion behind it. Hey, win or lose, you could bet up to $10. Win or lose, you're going to get a free, Barstool coffee cup or Barstool mug or a Barstool hoodie. You know what I mean? People love that stuff.
Absolutely. And I think the interesting thing about wrestling is if you look at a side of what prop bets could be as well, over under amount of takedowns in a match. Will there be a tech fall? Yes or no? Will there be a pin? Like dual meat wise, this could be really cool. This is a really cool space. And I think Barstool has the ability to add that factor into it as well, which could be really cool. So I'm all here for the betting side of it as well. But you also got to experience going and, like you talked about, Roman Bravo Young and going to actually wrestle with him at Penn State. Some of our mutual friends like to say you've gotten a takedown on him. I don't know if there's truth to that based off of the match that I saw, but I don't know if there's anything that happened behind the scenes.
No, not by a long shot, unfortunately.
Oh man. Well, I loved that match as well. That was really fun. But to get into a space, into a practice room, like I'm sure you have a list of places that you want to travel and things you want to do.
Yeah.
You're good friends with Kenny Pickett, right?
Yes.
Have you ever tried to convince Kenny Pickett to get into the pit wrestling room to see what that is like and introduce him to the world of wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. The only problem with that is it's kind of in a way at the same time as football,
Right.
So it's really hard for that, but definitely could do something off-season related.
Like a conditioning wrestling workout.
Yeah,
Kenny Pickett goes through a conditioning wrestling workout.
People would love that. People would eat that up so much.
Right?
Not only the Pittsburgh community, but people would love that. You know what I mean? So even like, okay, guys like, people don't know, Max Murrin from Iowa, die hard.
Mad Max.
Die hard Steelers fan.
Yeah.
Die hard, watches my podcast. So, there's people out there, there's a lot of Steelers fans out there that would love that, from different programs that wrestle in different states. You know what I mean? That would love to see a professional quarterback in the NFL go to a wrestling room and work out there. And Pitt has some great wrestlers, really good wrestlers.
Yeah. I mean, that program is awesome. My last Beers with Beers episode, like I said, was with Nino. And he's the best guy I've ever met in my whole life. He's great. But also, he just talks a lot about Keith Gavin and Drew and the way that they've helped this program, and they bringing in Luke Pletcher to add to the staff. And now Wenzel's there. Like, there are guys that are lifers there right now that are from Pittsburgh, here in Pittsburgh, trying to build within Pittsburgh. And it just has a really successful thing about it. And there's a lot of football players that used to be wrestlers. So get them back on the mat a little bit. The possibilities are absolutely endless with this, Jerry. Endless.
Yeah, they really are. They really are. There's so much you can do in this sport. You know what I mean? And I'm learning, like, just from growing my brand at Barstool, it opened up so many doors. You know what I mean? because Barstool is so massive. There's so many fans of Barstool. There's so many people that follow Barstool. It's like being a personality there. It's like I can do things I never even dreamed of. Like, you know, it's hard when you have, I remember back in, 2000 and, 16, 17, having 1,000 followers on Instagram and messaging players, and, they would never respond, obviously, I'm just some nobody and
Yeah.
whatnot. But you
We've
start to
all
get
been
some
there, okay?
you start to get some recognition though, and you put in the work, you work hard, you try to grow your brand, grow your audience, and now it's people like, I was just talking to Pat Fryermuth the other day from the
Mhm.
Steelers. He FaceTimes me, and I'm like, what the hell is he FaceTiming me for? He's like, yo, I'm with my boy. Say what's up. He doesn't believe that I know you and I'm friendly with you. So it's like, man, this is friggin' awesome, dude. But, people don't see, the work it takes, the hours it takes to, the funny videos, the sketches that I come out with to try to work and try to build myself up and build Barstool up. Like, people see a funny video online, like, Jerry, that's hilarious, great video, love the content. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on before that, you
Right.
know? So for me, it's like, man, it feels so good to work at Barstool. They've done an incredible job with helping me grow my brand, and it's opened up all these doors for me to walk through, essentially. I don't got to run through the doors no more. I'm
Yeah.
walking through them, you know? And it's like, man, these players know who I am. These programs know who I am now, So it's really, really cool.
For someone who's been like a diehard Steelers fan as well, for your entire life and being hired by Barstool to be a Steelers guy, how cool is it now to have that sort of camaraderie with a lot of those athletes that you cheer on or
Yeah.
get mad at on Sundays?
Yeah. So for me, it's, I always have an appreciation for it because I remember, back in 2015 when I got sober, there was just a feeling like I was never into content or anything like that. My friends
Mm.
always knew I was funny. I just had, I had a drug problem, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And, I got sober, and I never forget, it was about a year sober in 2016. And I was out to dinner with my mom one night, and I turned to her and I was like, I guarantee you, give me a couple of years. I guarantee you I'm going to make a name for myself, and I'm going to know, because my mom knows I'm a diehard Steelers fan.
Mhm.
These players are going to know who I am. I guarantee you. And she would laugh at me, be like, you're crazy. You're crazy. Just worry about staying sober. And that's all I care about.
Right.
And, a couple weeks ago, she's like, oh, what are your plans? What do you got coming up? I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm getting dinner with the Steelers quarterback again for like the third time. And it's like, man, it's friggin' so awesome, man. It really, really is. And I always knew I had something. I just didn't know how to tap into it. And I didn't know
Mhm.
how powerful social media was. And I figured it out. I would say for me, I figured it out now. I know what works. I know what doesn't work, So for me, it's like I'm living a dream. I really am.
Oh, we're so happy for you. I know. I'm so proud of you. Like everything that I know from experience of people that I'm close with and how hard addiction can be in recovery. And so I'm so proud of you for speaking that into existence, but then taking the steps to actually make it happen. And
Yeah.
really following through, like the consistency of it and the hard work and the grind. Listen, I got into the broadcast industry, so I know hard work, it takes a lot. It's
Yeah.
so annoying when people are like, why aren't you on ESPN today? Why aren't you doing this? I'm like, well, let me just tell you.
Yeah.
Funny thing about that is I'm actually
Yeah.
working about 60 hours weeks right now. Got 3 jobs going in one day, but we'll get there one day?
Yeah, exactly. I always go back to my roots, and I always go back to, where I was. And I never ever forget where I was, because where I was, just unfortunately a really dark place. And I never believed that there was a way out, until I finally went away. I got help. And, today a lot of people know me as, being funny and whatnot on Instagram, Twitter, but people also have another side to me that they see, and it's like, man, this kid is talking about sobriety all the time. This kid is preaching sobriety. This kid has a podcast on sobriety. He's affiliated with, different rehabs across the nation to help people, go away and get help. And he's an advocate for mental illness and stuff like that. So if it was up to me, like, I wouldn't need the fame. I wouldn't need the notoriety. I wouldn't need people to know who I am because I work at Barstool. I'd rather people know me, who I am as a just sober Jerry, who preaches sobriety, because the difference between a DM saying, "Hey, Jerry, that video was great," and a mother reaching out and saying, "Hey, Jersey Jerry, just want to let you know my son watches your podcast. He just went to rehab. He came out. He's 30 days sober." That means so much more to me than just an average fan just being like, "Hey, that was a great video, funny video."
Man, I'm getting emotional. Sorry to tell a little bit, but I'm just yeah, I would say quality over quantity, right? Like the
Yeah.
quality of messages you get are going to stick with you and making one difference at a time. So I was so excited to see that you got a partnership as well with Diamond Recovery. So was that one of the biggest accomplishments? Would you file this under one of the biggest accomplishments in your life to partner with somebody who's going to help people, that were just like you at one point in their life?
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's like, I'm not going to go into great detail, but like, Barstool's a different place. You know what I mean? Barstool has all the alcohol ads. They have the Coors Light and whatnot, the Pink Whitney. So me to come into that space and be like, that's great. You know what I mean? I'm happy for you guys and that's awesome, but for me, it's different. Like I'm giving them somebody who like, hey, I'm not really with that. You know what I mean? I'm with this movement. And the diversity, it's like sometimes I feel a little bit left out, but I love it because people now have another outlet to Barstool to where it's like, hey, he's not just a Steelers fan. He's sober just like me. And for that deal, what was pretty cool was, I don't know why the deal didn't go through with Barstool because it was initially supposed to go on through Barstool, but it never worked out. So pretty much what I said to Dave was say, hey man, they offered Barstool a deal. The sales team wasn't really fond of it. I'm all about sobriety, dude. I love to preach it. I love to talk about it. I would love for you to give me the opportunity to work with them, by myself if Barstool doesn't want to work with them. And it was a no-brainer. He's like, dude, I love you. Go do it on your own. Figure it out with them. And, it's been a great partnership so far. We scholarshiped somebody for free. We've also got like 3 or 4 people into the program now who are Barstool fans. So it's like, man, we're changing lives.
Absolutely. And for the absolute better of changing lives. So you are, gosh, a dynamic force at Barstool, and to see, where you started and where it's come and how far it's come and your brand and what it is. I laugh so hard because if people tried to box you into like one thing of like who is Jersey Jerry, you really can't. You've got Barstool
No.
Wrestling, you've got Pittsburgh Steelers, you have all of your sobriety platforms and all those friends. And now you even are an expert in fragrances. Like you
Yeah.
smell great. I hear you smell really good.
Yeah, people say that all the time. I was just getting a refresher somewhere, and I walked into the store, and before I walked into the store, I looked to my left and there was this like group of kids. They were from Teen Challenge and they were selling these really cool cutting boards. And I'm like, frig, man, let me go support these guys. This was awesome. But yeah, like me at Barstool, it's like my plan was I don't want to be tied to one thing because I'd rather have 50 different things that are somewhat successful than one thing that is super successful. Because for me, it's like that's how you grow your audience. You know what I mean? That's how you get different types of people to tune into your content.
Right.
So the cologne thing is really funny. I was never into cologne until I got sober. I never wore cologne before at all. And then I got sober and I'm like, man, let me buy this thing from Macy's. I bought it and I was like, oh man, this smells good. And
Do you
then
remember what it was called?
yeah, it was called Paco Rabanne 1 million.
Okay.
And I bought it and I was like, man, this smells good. And then, you'd go out to eat and whatnot. And people would be like, man, you smell great. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And then I just started collecting them. And, I just figured it makes for some funny content with the videos I do. And hey, people love it. All these companies reach out and like, hey, can you do ours? Can you do ours? And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem.
Here's what I think we should do. I'm saying we as if this involves me at all. It doesn't. For your Barstool Wrestling platform, let's eventually get to a point where you partner with a fragrance company and we make the scent of a national champion, and each national champ of the wrestling tournament gets their own scent.
Oh,
Okay.
that'd be awesome. That'd be really
Like,
cool.
can you see the commercial of Spencer Lee? Like it gets, like it gets dark and the lights come on. It's like, like a
That's
national
great.
champion.
That's
You've got
amazing.
the
That's a
whole
great
thing
idea.
planned out, right? Like
Great
the
idea.
possibilities are endless, Dave. Invest
Yeah.
in wrestling.
Yeah, he should.
I'm
He
here
should.
for
But you
it.
know what? I think he will over time. I don't think it'll
Mhm.
happen overnight. I think, Dave is one of the nicest and genuine people I ever met. And he's not just gonna hand you anything.
No, you're gonna work for it at his company because he had to
Ex-
work for it, right?
exactly. So for him, it's like he knows. He deep down, I think he knows that if Barstool went all in on wrestling, he can grow it for sure. He can
Mhm.
because he has a massive audience. Barstool has a massive audience. He can grow it like that. But I kind of like this route better because now it gets me hungrier. It gets me more determined to be like, hey Dave, we're a year in. The YouTube page has 50,000 subscribers now. We're getting over 50,000, 100,000 engagements on a daily basis on the Twitter, and we're getting this many likes, we're getting this many views. And it's like, man, maybe he'll start to come around to it and be like, you know what? Let's go all in now. You already proved yourself. We have the foundation. Let's blow it up now.
But he's also a businessman, so obviously he wants
Of
to see all
course.
the analytics and everything happen naturally. That's how he built what he did.
Of course.
Does Dave Portnoy smell good? Does he smell as good as you?
He only wears one cologne. He only wears one. I'm not going to
Okay.
reveal it because he doesn't. He's so weird like that. It took him months for him to tell me what it was. And he's like, don't tell anybody. And I'm like, all right, cool. I won't tell anybody about it. He wears one cologne, but I'll be honest with you. I never smelt it on him, but he wears it on a daily basis, which is weird. And what's weird is it's a
So is it
really,
just his like natural scent now? It's kind of like sunk in.
yeah, I don't know. It's not really, it's a very expensive bottle of cologne and he wears the same one every day. But, yeah, I never really smelt it that on him like that.
But he smells good.
Yeah, he smells good. I'd
All
say he
right, Dave
smells good.
Portnoy smells good. All right, I would hope so. I've always wondered what people smell like. You know what I mean? Like, do you know when you
Yeah.
see like famous people and you're like, I wonder what they smell like? Is that weird? That
Yeah.
must be weird. Maybe I should cut that out. I don't know, but I just wonder what people smell like. I think it's
Yeah.
important to smell good. Who's the best person? Who's the best smelling person you've ever smelled then? Because if you're into fragrances now, I feel like this is what you've got to pay attention to a little bit. What are people wearing?
Like celebrity wise,
Yeah, let's go celebrity first, and then you can tell me who else.
Tracy Morgan.
Interesting.
Yeah, I interviewed him on my sobriety podcast. I went to his house and actually interviewed him in his bowling alley. He smelled great and the house smelled great.
Oh, even better. A good smelling house.
Yeah.
That's a good person. Oh
Yeah,
man, what
I
was
had
it? Was it like an Okies? Like, okay, I'm trying to picture Tracy Morgan and what Tracy Morgan smells.
yeah, I don't even know what he had on to be honest with you, but he smelled great.
I mean, I'm here for it. Tracy Morgan, come on down. Let
Yeah,
us
I
know
got
what you
actually
smell like.
really close to Omar Khan one day. We took a picture together. He smelled great.
Yeah,
He smelled great. Oh
man.
yeah.
All right, when I see Omar next, I'm gonna let him know and be like, "What's your clone? You gonna pass it out?"
I actually met him at a Steelers game, and I didn't even introduce myself. The
He's a
first
great
thing,
guy.
the first thing I said to bust his balls, I was like, "Hey Omar, do we have any money left over to get Antonio Brown back?" And then he looked at me and he just started dying laughing, like, "You're crazy, dude."
You've got to shoot your shot though
Oh
with
yeah,
the GMs though, right? So speaking
yeah.
of Steelers storylines, what one intrigues you most headed into this season? Is it all the free agency stuff that we got? Patrick Peterson, a guy being added to the team, the lines getting beefed up a bit to protect your guy, Kenny Pickett, the draft coming up. Tell me what are some of the most intriguing storylines for your team in your mind?
For me, I just, the development of Kenny Pickett, and I
Mm.
think we've seen glimpses of how special he can be. But the season was such a weird season with the injury to TJ Watt, which hurts the defense, a lot. And it did significantly for the time he was out. So it kind of felt like for most of the season, the Steelers were always behind. They were always a step behind, you know. The thing was Kenny really didn't get much QB1 reps in camp. And you kind of seen that in the beginning of the year where he struggled a little bit. He wasn't on the same page as his wide receivers. Fast forward throughout the year, he starts to look better and better and better and better each week. And now you have a whole entire offseason that he's been working out down in Florida and bringing the receivers there, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, bringing these guys down, working out with them, and, getting that connection with them. And we'll see going into the year. The first couple weeks will tell you what you need to know about the Steelers season, because if they come out like they did last year, they're in for a pretty tough season. I really think so. But I don't
Minus
think
the first game against the Bengals, because I think we were pretty
Yeah.
happy about that one.
Yeah, but bearing any significant injury
Mhm.
to significant players on the roster, I think you're going to see a Kenny Pickett who's going to show out. I really, really do, and I'm not just saying that because he's my friend, but if you follow him, if you're not his friend and you just follow his Instagram, follow his Twitter and whatnot, he works out every single day. I
Mhm.
mean, he went home for a week or two after the season, and he even talked about this story where he got home for a week or two and he's pacing back and forth, and his fiance is like, "Hey, just leave. Just go work out. You want to go work out, go work out." And it's like a week turnaround where he's back in the gym, he's back working out, he's hanging out with his wide receivers, he's hanging out with the offense, and I think he's due for a really good year. So I think that for me is like the main storyline where I'm really interested to see, hey, let's be for sure this is our guy, because I think he is the guy. I just want him to prove all the haters wrong and all the doubters wrong, because you see that all day on Twitter, like, oh, he small hands, he throws interceptions. But I'm a big time Steelers fan. I watch every game. A lot of those interceptions weren't his fault. A couple of them were. Sure, every quarterback's going to throw interceptions, but for the most part, they weren't his fault. And look at his back half of the year. It was incredible what he did. Winning the last 4 out of 5 games. Fighting for a playoff spot. With a dinged up roster and a really young offense, the least expensive offense in the whole NFL last year. So we'll see what happens.
I'll say I completely agree with you. I followed a lot of Steelers football last year. Obviously, I'm a huge Steelers fan, work for the team in some capacity, but then also I'm a part of the Pittsburgh media. We had a show called Inside the Huddle, and literally on a weekly basis, we're breaking down the Steelers. And I had looked at so many next gen stats with the plays and the routes that were being run. I was obsessed with after that bye week, how Kenny Pickett just started letting loose. And I think that's what the offense needed.
Yeah.
Finally, I'd rather see him take 10 shots down the field over 20 plus yards and throw an interception every once in a while than have these little like shovel passes or run the ball every once in a while, get 5 yards, a 10-yard pass here and there. I'd rather see this gain some, make teams guess a little bit, be less predictable. And I think Kenny's the guy. If you go to Acrisure Stadium, Kenny's the guy. People love him there. He's the future. So I'm excited to see what the Steelers do to build around him more as well. But if there's another player that you're focused on to see, like, are they going to have a breakout year, or what's this going to look like for them? Who's the next most intriguing player to you on the Pittsburgh Steelers right now?
I think it has to be George Pickens. I really do.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he's a generational talent. You don't see wide receivers like him very often, where he kind of has that Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson, build in a way. And he's like, to me, when I watch him on the field, he's a guy who wants the ball. He's the guy where it's like, hey, you could throw it out downfield. It's not a 50-50 ball. It's a 70-30 ball if he's one-on-one. He's bigger, he's strong, his hands are great, his feet are great. I think with a whole offseason now, you're really going to see him explode next year. I really, really do.
I agree.
And that's what kind of pissed me off in a way about the Steelers season last year. I felt like he could have got the ball a lot more than he did. I feel like there was shots there. He's a guy who's going to say, I'm open even if I'm not open.
Mhm.
And I love
And
that.
he kind of is open when he wasn't open, let's be honest.
Yeah, and he's like a physical player. I mean, what he does to defensive backs off the snap, it's like, I mean, he's just dominating everybody in front of him. So they can double team him all they want this year. If he starts to go crazy, we still have other weapons, Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, Najee Harris, Calvin Austin coming back. That's another storyline. Hey, we don't know what to expect from him. He's a speedy wide receiver, and we'll see what we can get out of him. Hopefully he can play in the slot a little bit at times this year. But I think the Steelers are in a really, really good shape to have a really successful year.
I am too. Just no more injuries, because even Pat
Yeah.
Freiermuth at times last year was a little injury bound, and that really hurt the Steelers, because then you can't do as much with the offense, and he's such a key asset, because if he's going one-on-one with someone in the middle of the field, I'm taking him just about 90% of the time.
Yeah.
I saw him at Penn State do it 99% of the time.
Yeah.
So he's
He never
the guy we're counting on.
never dropped the touchdown pass in his career at Penn State.
Yeah. And it was Beaver Stadium would let you know that. Let me tell you, that was it was a good time. But with the draft coming up, all right, who do you want to see the Steelers take in the first round? They've got a couple picks spread around the board in great position. Now there's always things that could trade, but with the Steelers' first round pick, their first pick in the first round, who would you want to see them take?
I would like to see them take a tackle. I
Mhm.
really would. I wouldn't go cornerback right away. I think the cornerback depth is really good in the draft. I would love to see, my first choice would be offensive line, because, hey, everything starts and ends with Kenny Pickett. In the NFL, if you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to win a Super Bowl.
Right.
That's just how it is now. If you don't have a good quarterback, you're not going to win a Super Bowl. So you have to build around him. That's just what it is in the NFL. Like, you look at the last decade of the NFL.
Mhm.
If you don't score 24, 27 points a game, you're not going to go to the Super Bowl. That's
Right.
just what it is. And the stats are there to back it up. You show me a team who averaged less than 3.5 touchdowns a game that went on to win a Super Bowl in the last decade, it's not there.
Yeah.
So you have to have a really, really good offense to win a Super Bowl. So for me, I'd go tackle. My second option would be D-line. But there's a lot of mocks out there that say the Steelers are drafting a cornerback first. The thing that scares me is, and I know it's a new regime now, but the Steelers just don't draft cornerback well.
Mhm.
They haven't in the last 15 years. I mean, you
Yeah.
go through the list. You have Cam Sutton, who was great, and you have to go all the way back to pretty much Ike Taylor.
Yes.
We
talked a lot about this, Jerry, trust me, during the season, of that quarterback position. And I'd love to see this like big star, but here's where I think I agree with you completely with your draft picks as well. I think build around Kenny Pickett as much as you can. You've already invested heavily in the defense last year. So now everyone coming in healthy should be able to prove that they're right where they need to be. We're good. But then bringing in a guy like Patrick Peterson is so smart, in my opinion, because that also leads me to believe that no matter who you bring in what round, you have this veteran Pro Bowl guy who has seen offenses from every division at this point, every quarterback, every scheme, every system. And no matter how talented you are, now you've got that mind to help you. And I think learning what an offense in the NFL does to a defense is almost more important than the skill at that point.
Of course.
To come in there. So I think that was a really smart move. But I'm kind of praying that they hold off on that. There were even, if you look back at some cornerback draft picks that were drafted late that panned out this season, there were guys that were drafted like 6th round, kind of 7th round, fell to a team and then ended up being really successful this year.
Yeah.
So I think that's a position that has more depth throughout than a lot of these, like, hey, if you want to get a good offensive lineman, get him early, get him now.
Yeah, for sure. I think the Steelers need to start there, and just like you said, I feel like Patrick Peterson is not only going to help the defense, he's going to help Kenny Pickett a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And now you guys on, the Steelers on defense, I mean, there is Pro Bowl talent all over the field. I mean, Minka, you got Minka, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward.
Could have made an argument for Highsmith this year.
Highsmith, I mean, just the roster on defense is built really well. Sure, they're going to take some defensive linemen in the draft at some point, which they need to. But you bought in these linebackers who are captains and play callers, from the Commanders, and the Dolphins, and hopefully those guys pan out. But I think the defense is in a good place. I would love to see the offense kind of take that next step this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Jerry. It's been a pleasure having you on here. You're a fantastic person. You're so well-rounded with everything that you do. You're such a light to everybody here. If anyone's struggling with addiction and needs help with their sobriety, Jerry is the person to go to and follow for all of that. He's fantastic in helping everyone get through those hard times and really manifest who they want to be like you did. So excited for that. All of you wrestling fans, get on board with
Yes.
Barstool Wrestling. It's up, it's coming, it's ready. And as we're speaking right now, MLB opening day is today. So I know this won't air a little bit, but your best futures bet for the MLB when you're looking at it, who's your team? What are you hoping for?
Man, Yankees are winning 3-0 right now. I'm watching. I think the Yankees will win it all this year. I think
All
either
right.
the Yankees or the Padres. I think you'll see those two teams in the World Series. And
You
I'm
don't
going to
want
go
to
with
say the
Yankees.
Pirates? You don't want to say the Pirates?
No, they're not
No?
good enough.
Listen, it's okay. We get it. We'll stick with you being a Steelers fan for now, but betting on the Buccos a little bit this year. At least come on, get over that 500, guys. Let's go.
Yeah,
I'm here
I
for
hope
it.
they do. I would love to see a turnaround.
Me too. I'm here for it. Jerry, my last question for you, something we do on Beers with Mears with every single guest is I have a Beers with Mears guest playlist.
Mm-hmm.
Every guest puts on 3 songs onto the Spotify playlist that they want people to listen to get the party started. Something if your friends hand you the aux, the 3 songs that you're going to play, what would they be so we can add to this?
I would do Better Off Alone by Alice DJ.
Okay.
So it's an interesting one.
Uh-huh.
I would go Drake 5 a.m. in Toronto.
Love it.
So I'm a big Drake guy, I like him.
Great guy.
And then I would go to switch it up. I'd go with Jordan Davis, Buy Dirt.
Yes.
I'm very friendly with him.
Are you?
Yeah.
Interesting. Is he a good guy? Is he buying dirt? Actually, like that kind of country guy?
Yes, he is. He started, I was, I had a couple thousand followers and somehow he found me and, years ago, and we've been pretty cool, really, really nice ever since.
All right. I'm a big fan of his music. Tell him that. So Jordan Davis, big Jersey Jerry fan from the beginning.
Yes, he is.
He's been there from the start. Thank you so much for joining our non-alcoholic version of Beers with Mears today. I really appreciate you and everything that you've done. And of course, to grow the sport of wrestling, I'm always here to help. So thank you for that as well, Jerry.
For sure. No problem. I look forward to meeting up in Pittsburgh.
Absolutely.
Let's go, Mears!